"Look what you did!" Flight attendant Beatrice Vane screamed, not bothering to help, as boiling coffee seared the skin of 7-month pregnant Maya Reynolds. Instead of an apology, Beatrice sneered, grabbed the phone, and demanded police arrest Maya for assault upon landing. Maya sobbed in pain, terrified she would give birth in a French jail cell. But Beatrice didn't notice the quiet older man in seat 2A, calmly filming her every move. She thought he was just another helpless passenger. She had no idea he was Arthur Pendleton, the billionaire CEO of the entire airline, and he wasn't just going to fire her. He was about to destroy her life. The humid July air clung to the jet bridge at JFK International Airport. But inside the cabin of Vanguard Air Flight 1882, bound for Paris, the air was crisp-chilled and smelled faintly of expensive leather and sanitizing wipes. Maya Reynolds adjusted the strap of her oversized tote bag, her hand instinctively resting on the high, round curve of her stomach. At 7 months pregnant, simply walking down the aisle felt like a marathon. She was exhausted. It had been a grueling week in New York, finalizing the contracts for her interior design firm, Reynolds & Co., and all she wanted was to sink into the plush seat of 3A, drink a glass of ice water, and sleep until they crossed the Atlantic. She wasn't supposed to be in first class. Her original booking was an economy, plus sensible and within budget. But her husband David had surprised her at the check-in counter, using miles he had been hoarding for 3 years to upgrade her. "For you and the baby," he'd said over FaceTime, his face beaming. "I want my girls comfortable." Maya smiled at the memory as she stepped onto the plane. She wore a loose, cream-cold linen dress that draped elegantly over her bump, and her hair was pulled back in a neat, professional bun. She looked every bit the successful businesswoman she was. Yet as she crossed the threshold into the first-class cabin, the atmosphere shifted. Standing at the galley entrance was the purser, a woman whose name tag read Beatrice Vane. Beatrice was a woman who wore her uniform like armor. Her blonde hair was lacquered into a helmet of perfection. Her lipstick was a shade of red that looked like a warning sign, and her eyes were cold, hard chips of blue ice. She was currently smiling at a businessman in a bespoke suit, entering ahead of Ma, greeting him with a syrupy, "Welcome aboard, Mr. Henderson. Good to see you again." But when Mia stepped forward, the smile didn't just fade, it vanished. Beatrice's eyes ran over Mia, lingering on her dark skin, her natural hair, and the gentle swell of her pregnancy. She didn't see a successful architect. She saw an anomaly. "Boarding pass," Beatrice said. No welcome, no good evening, just a demand, her hand extended with a sharp, impatient twitch. Maya, used to the subtle friction that sometimes came with navigating spaces not originally designed for her, kept her smile polite. She pulled her phone from her bag. "Good evening. I'm in 3A. Beatrice didn't look at the screen. She looked at Maya. "Are you sure economy boarding is through the next aisle, dear? This is first class. It creates a lot of traffic when people get lost." The condescension was thick enough to choke on. The businessman, Mr. Henderson, paused while stowing his bag, glancing back with a frown, but said nothing. "I'm aware," Maya said, her voice steady. She brightened the screen and held it closer to Beatrice's face. "Seat 3A, Maya Reynolds." Beatrice snatched the phone, her manicured nail tapping the screen aggressively, as if trying to find a flaw in the digital pixels. She huffed a short, sharp exhalation of annoyance. "Fine. 3A left side. Try to get that bag up quickly. We're on a tight schedule, and I don't want the aisle blocked. I might need a little assistance lifting it," Maya admitted, gesturing to her stomach. "My doctor advised against heavy lifting overhead." Beatrice laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "I am a flight attendant, Mrs. Reynolds, not a porter. If you pack it, you stack it. That's the rule. If you can't handle your luggage, perhaps you should have checked it. Maya felt the heat rise in her cheeks. It wasn't the refusal, it was the malice behind it. She was about to retort when a shadow fell over them. "I've got it." The voice was growly and low. Maya turned to see the passenger from seat 2A standing up. He was an older man, perhaps in his late 60s, with salt and pepper hair and a face lined with deep creases. He wore a slightly rumpled navy blazer and reading glasses that hung from a chain around his neck. He looked like a retired professor or a weary grandfather. "Oh, sir, please sit down." Beatrice cooed her voice, instantly transforming back to syrup. "We don't want you straining yourself. She can figure it out." The man ignored Beatrice entirely. He smiled gently at Mare, a twinkle in his grey eyes. "My wife carried 4 of ours. I know the drill. Here." With surprising strength, the older man hoisted Mia's bag and slid it smoothly into the overhead bin. "Thank you so much," Maya said, exhaling a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "I really appreciate it." "Name's Arthur," the man said, offering a hand. "Mia." "Pleasure, Maya." "Now let's get settled. Long flight ahead." As Arthur sat back down in 2A, he pulled a small leather-bound notebook from his pocket. He adjusted his glasses and scribbled something down. Beatrice, busy rearranging the galley cart, didn't notice, but Maya did. She saw him glance at Beatrice's name tag, then back to the page. Maya sank into seat 3A, the leather cool against her back. She thought the worst was over. She thought she could just put on her noise-cancelling headphones and drift away. But as the plane taxied to the runway, she caught Beatrice staring at her from the jump seat. It was a look of pure, unadulterated disdain. This wasn't over. For Beatrix Vane, the flight had just begun. The seatbelt sign pinged off 30 minutes after takeoff. The cabin was dimly lit, the hum of the engines providing a white noise lully for the weary travelers. In first class, the service was supposed to be impeccable, a ballet of hot towels, champagne, and warm nuts. For everyone else, it was. Maya watched as Beatrice moved down the aisle. She was charming, efficient, and attentive to everyone. She joked with Mr. Henderson in 1A. She spent 5 minutes discussing wine pairings with a couple in 4B and 4C. She even offered a pillow to Arthur in 2A without him asking. But whenever she reached row 3, the temperature seemed to drop. "Drink, Beatrice said, stopping at Mera's seat. She didn't offer the menu. She didn't list the specials. "I'd like some water, please," Maya said, "and maybe a cup of decaf coffee if it's fresh." "We're out of bottled water right now," Beatrice lied smoothly. Maya could see a fresh bottle of Eve sitting on her cart, condensation still clinging to the plastic. "Tap water is all I have for you. I can see the bottle right there." Maya pointed out her patience thinning. Beatrice rolled her eyes, an exaggerated motion that seemed to scream, "How dare you? That is reserved for platinum members, Mrs. Reynolds. I can't just give premium inventory to upgrades. You understand?" Maya didn't argue. She knew how this game was played. If she raised her voice, she became the angry black woman. If she complained, she was difficult. She needed to protect her peace for the sake of the baby. "Fine. Tap water. And the decaf. It's brewing. It'll be a while." Beatrice shoved a plastic cup of lukewarm water onto Maya's tray table. No coaster, no napkin, and moved on. Across the aisle, Arthur lowered his newspaper. Over the top of his reading glasses, he watched the interaction. He took a sip of his own drink. Sparkling water from a glass bottle with a slice of lime, and frowned. He reached for his notebook again. An hour passed. The cabin smelled of dinner service, roasted chicken, and truffle pasta. Maya was starving. When Beatrice finally came around with the meal cart, she breezed past row 3 entirely. "Excuse me," Mia called out softly. "Miss Vane." Beatrice stopped the cart and reversed slowly, the wheels squeaking. "Yes, you skipped me for dinner." "Oh, did I?" Beatrix feigned surprise, her hand fluttering to her chest. "I assumed you weren't hungry since you brought so much food in your bag." "I have a granola bar," Maya said, baffled. "I'd like the chicken, please. We ran out. The cabin is half empty." Mr. Henderson asked for seconds, and the couple in row 4 wanted extra for later. "First come, first served. I have a vegan salad left. Take it or leave it." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. It was the hormones, she told herself. It was just hunger. She took the salad. It was wilted, soured, and cold. As she picked at the lettuce, she heard a soft voice from across the aisle. Here Arthur was leaning across the gap. In his hand was a pristine, untouched plate of the roasted chicken, steaming and fragrant. "I'm not really hungry," Arthur whispered, winking. "My doctor says I need to watch my cholesterol. You're eating for 2. Do me a favor and take it off my hands." Maya looked at him, gratitude washing over her. "Are you sure positive?" "Besides," he lowered his voice, his eyes hardening, as he glanced towards the galley where Beatrice was gossiping with a junior flight attendant. "I have a feeling you need the energy." "She hates me," Maya whispered, admitting it out loud for the first time. "I don't even know why." Arthur didn't say it's in your head. He didn't say she's just stressed. He looked Maya dead in the eye. People like her don't need a reason to be small. They just need an opportunity. "But don't worry, Maya. The flight isn't over yet." He sat back, returning to his notebook. He wasn't just scribbling anymore. Mia noticed he was writing down times. 1945. Meal denied. 2010. Rude conduct. Mia ate the chicken, feeling her strength return. She decided she would ignore Beatrice for the rest of the flight. She would close her eyes, listen to her podcast, and land in Paris. She wouldn't give Beatrice the satisfaction of a reaction. But Beatrice wasn't done. She had seen the exchange of the food. She had seen the solidarity. And in her twisted mind, that was an act of rebellion. The turbulence started over the Atlantic, somewhere near the tip of Newfoundland. It wasn't severe, just the standard chop that turned the seatbelt sign on. "Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the fastened seatbelt sign. Please return to your seats." The intercom announced. Maya was reading a magazine, her tray table down. She felt a dry tickle in her throat. She pressed the call button. 2 minutes passed, then 3. Finally, Beatrice appeared. She didn't look happy. She looked like a predator whose nap had been disturbed. "What is it now?" Beatrice snapped, bracing herself against the seat as the plane dipped slightly. "I'm sorry to bother you," Maya said. "But could I get that decaf coffee now? I'm feeling a little chilly." "We are in turbulence, Mrs. Reynolds. Hot liquids are a safety hazard." "I see the pilot just ordered a coffee," Maya said, gesturing to the junior flight attendant who had just walked into the cockpit with a steaming pot, and the sign just went off. Indeed, the ding sounded, and the seatbelt light extinguished. The air was smooth again. Beatrice's jaw tightened. She was caught. To refuse now would be blatant insubordination of service standards, and even she knew there were limits. "Fine 1 decaf black. Please with cream and sugar." Beatrice marched to the galley. She was gone for a long time. When she returned, she wasn't carrying a pot. She was carrying a single, large ceramic mug. It was filled to the absolute brim. Steam was rising off it in aggressive, swirling clouds. Maya sat up, clearing her tray table to make space. "Thank you." Beatrice stood over her. She didn't place the mug down. She held it hovering, just over Maya's lap. The plane was steady. There was no shaking. "Here is your coffee," Beatrice said, her voice eerily calm. "Could you set it down, please?" Maya asked, instinctively placing a hand over her stomach. It looks very full. My hands are full. Mrs. Reynolds. Take it. Mia reached up to grasp the handle. What happened next was a blur. Yet for May, it happened in slow motion. Just as Mia's fingers grazed the ceramic handle, Beatrix's hand slipped. It wasn't a drop. It was a tilt, a deliberate wrist-flicking tilt. The mug overturned. 12 oz of near-boiling liquid cascaded down. It missed the tray table entirely. It splashed directly onto Maya's chest, soaking through the thin linen of her dress, running down her stomach and pooling in her lap. Ah! The scream ripped through the quiet first-class cabin. It was a primal, gut-wrenching sound of pure agony. The liquid was scalding hot, arguably hotter than regulation allowed. It seared her skin instantly. Maya scrambled, trying to stand up, trying to pull the burning fabric away from her pregnant belly. It burns. It burns, help me. Oh my God! Beatrice shouted, stepping back. But there was no shock in her eyes, only performance. Look what you did. You knocked it right out of my hand. I didn't touch it, Maya cried, tears streaming down her face as she frantically wiped at the liquid. Her skin was already turning an angry, blistered red. Get me ice, please. Get me water. Arthur was out of his seat in a nancond. He ignored the crew-only protocol and rushed to Mia's side. Get a wet towel now. He roared at the junior flight attendant who had frozen in the aisle. Beatrice, however, didn't move to help. She stood there, crossing her arms. She reached for it clumsily. It's her own fault. And look at the mess on the carpet. Do you know how much it costs to clean these rugs? Are you insane? Arthur yelled, his voice booming with an authority that shook the cabin. She is burning. Get the medical kit. Sit down, sir. Beatrice snapped back. This is a safety issue. She is out of control. She attacked me. Maya was hyperventilating. The pain was excruciating, radiating across her chest and thighs. But worse than the pain was the terror. The baby. The heat on her stomach. Was the baby okay, my baby? Maya sobbed, sinking back into the seat, shaking uncontrollably. Please, my baby. Arthur grabbed the bottle of sparkling water from his own seat and poured it gently over Mia's burns to cool the skin. He stripped off his blazer and began to fan her. He turned to Beatrice, his face a mask of cold fury. You did that on purpose, Arthur said. It wasn't a question. I did no such thing. Beatrice scoffed. She's clumsy and now she's making a scene. I'm going to have to write this up. Beatrice turned on her heel and marched toward the cockpit phone. She picked up the receiver and keyed the pilot. Captain Beatrice said, her voice loud enough for the first few rows to hear. We have a situation in first class. Passenger in 3A is violent. She threw hot coffee on herself and is now screaming and disrupting the flight. I might need restraints. Yes, I think we need police on the ground in Paris. Maya heard the words through a haze of pain. Restraints police. She was the victim. She was the one burning. Arthur stood up straight. He looked at the junior flight attendant, a young girl named Sarah who looked terrified. Sarah, Arthur said calmly, go get the burn gel from the kit. Bring me clean towels. Ignore her. He pointed at Beatrice. Do it now. Sarah looked at Beatrice, then at the suffering pregnant woman, and made a choice. She ran to the galley. Arthur turned back to Beatrice, who was still on the phone, lying to the captain. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He didn't film Maya. He filmed Beatrice. You have made a grave mistake, Miss Vane, Arthur said softly. Beatrice covered the mouthpiece and sneered at him. Sit down, old man, or I'll have you arrested as an accomplice. You don't know who you're messing with. I run this cabin. Arthur stared at her, his eyes dark and dangerous. And I, he said, run this airline. The cabin of Flight 882 had become a theatre of cruelty, and Beatrix Vane was its director. Arthur's declaration, I run this airline, hung in the air for a fraction of a second, but Beatrice, entrenched in her 15 years of seniority and blinded by her own prejudice, dismissed it instantly as the ramblings of a senile old man trying to play hero. "Sure you do, Grandpa," Beatrice sneered, turning her back on him. "And I'm the Queen of England. Now sit down before I add interfering with a flight crew to the charges." She turned her attention back to the cockpit phone, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, urgent whisper that was nonetheless perfectly audible to the surrounding rows. "Captain, it's worse than I thought. The passenger in 2A, the older gentleman, he's agitated. He's encouraging the disruptive passenger in 3A. I believe they might be travelling together, perhaps part of a coordinated disturbance." "Yes. I need you to make an announcement. We need to lock down the cabin." Maya still doubled over in her seat, whimpering, as Sarah, the junior attendant, gently applied burn gel to her blistered skin, couldn't believe what she was hearing. The narrative was being rewritten in real time. She wasn't a victim of assault anymore. She was a co-conspirator in an in-flight rebellion. "Why are you lying?" Maya gasped, the pain in her chest throbbing in rhythm with her terrifyingly fast heartbeat. "He helped me. You hurt me." Beatrice ignored her completely. She hung up the phone and stood at the front of the cabin, smoothing her skirt, adopting the pose of a beleaguered professional dealing with unruly children. A moment later, the cabin lights flickered on to full brightness, jarring everyone awake. The public address system crackled. The captain's voice, usually soothing and authoritative, was now stern and clipped. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Davies speaking. We are currently dealing with a Level 2 security situation in the first-class cabin involving 2 disruptive passengers. For your safety, I need everyone to remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We are expediting our approach to Paris, and authorities will be meeting the aircraft upon arrival. Do not, I repeat, do not enter the forward aisle or attempt to interact with the crew until further notice." The announcement was a master stroke of manipulation. Instantly, the atmosphere in the plane shifted from curiosity to hostility. Passengers back in economy craned their necks, whispering nervously about terrorists or drunkards up front. In first class, the glances turned toward Mir were no longer sympathetic. They were accusing. Mr. Henderson in 1A muttered audibly, "Unbelievable. Some people just don't know how to behave in public." The couple in row 4 shook their heads, looking at Mir with open disgust, as if her agony was a personal inconvenience to their vacation. Beatrice basked in the shift. She had successfully weaponized the entire aircraft against a pregnant woman she had just assaulted. "You see," Beatrice hissed at Maya looming over her, "nobody believes you. You're just a troublemaker in an expensive seat you don't belong in. When we land, the French police will take you into custody. I hope you enjoy giving birth in a holding cell." Maya felt a wave of dizziness. The terror was overwhelming. She imagined being dragged off the plane in zip ties, separated from her husband, alone in a foreign country, while going into labor induced by stress and trauma. The tears came faster, now hot tracks down her face that mingled with the cooling gel on her chest. "Sarah," Beatrice barked at the junior attendant who was holding Mir's hand. "Get away from her. Stop coddling the prisoner. Go back to the galley and prepare the restraint kit. If she moves one in from that seat, we are zip-tying her to the frame." Captain's orders. Sarah looked horrified. "But Beatrice, her skin, it's peeling. She needs a doctor. She needs a jail cell. Move now." Sarah, terrified of losing her job, let go of Maya's hand and retreated backward, her eyes full of apology. Maya was alone, isolated in a metal tube 30,000 FT in the air, branded a criminal for the crime of existing, while black in Beatrix Vane's domain. The pain of the burns was secondary now to the crushing weight of the injustice. She closed her eyes, whispering a prayer for her unborn child, praying they would both survive this nightmare. She didn't see Arthur stand up again. She only heard his voice. It was different this time. It wasn't the friendly grandfather's voice, nor was it the angry passenger's roar. It was something else, entirely. A sound like steel doors slamming shut. That is quite enough. Beatrice spun around. I told you to sit down. One more word out of you, and I swear. Arthur didn't sit. He stepped into the aisle, blocking Beatrice's path to the galley. He reached into his blazer pocket. He didn't pull out a weapon. He didn't pull out a phone. He pulled out a simple, sleek, black leather wallet. He flipped it open. Inside wasn't a driver's license or a credit card. It was a heavy metallic ID card with a holographic chip embossed with the winged V logo of Vanguard Global. Below the photo was a name and a title printed in bold gold letters. He held it up inches from Beatrix's face. "Read it," Arthur commanded. His voice was terrifyingly quiet. "Read it out loud, Miss Vane." Beatrice blinked, her arrogance faltering for just a microcond as her eyes attempted to focus on the card. She squinted, ready to dismiss it as fake. Then she read the name, and for the first time since takeoff, Beatrix Vane stopped smiling. The silence in the first-class cabin was absolute. The hum of the engine seemed to fade away, leaving only the sound of Beatrix Vane's shallow, panicked breathing. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the metallic card Arthur was holding steady in front of her face. Her perfectly applied red lipstick suddenly seemed too bright against skin that was rapidly draining of color. "I don't," she stammered, her voice a cracked whisper. "Read it," Arthur repeated. There was no anger in his tone anymore, only the crushing weight of absolute authority. It was the voice of a man used to commands being obeyed instantly without question, so that everyone can hear who you have been threatening with arrest. Beatrice swallowed hard. Her eyes darted around the cabin, looking for an escape, looking for an ally. She found none. Mr. Henderson in 1A was leaning forward, his brow furrowed. The junior flight attendant, Sarah, was peeking out from the galley curtains, eyes wide. Beatrice looked back at the card. She had to say it. Arthur Pendleton. She whispered the name, tasting like ash in her mouth. "Louder," Arthur commanded. "And the title." Beatrice looked like she might faint. Her hands, previously so steady when pouring scalding coffee, were now trembling violently at her sides. "Arthur Pendleton," she said, her voice shaking just loud enough for the first few rows to hear. "Chief Executive Officer, Vanguard Global Holdings." The words hit the cabin like a physical blow. Vanguard Global Holdings, the parent company, the entity that owned Vanguard Airlines, along with a dozen other travel and logistics firms. Arthur wasn't just a frequent flyer. He wasn't just a platinum member. He was the man who signed the paychecks of every single person employed by the airline, from the baggage handlers in Topeka to the captain in the cockpit right now. He was quite literally her ultimate boss. A gasp rippled through the cabin. Mr. Henderson, in 1, audibly choked on his drink. Arthur slowly lowered the wallet, his grey eyes boring into Beatrice. The grandfatherly facade was completely gone. Standing there in the aisle of his own aircraft, he looked every inch the titan of industry. He was a man known in boardrooms for his ruthless efficiency and zero tolerance for incompetence. 15 years, Miss Vane, Arthur said, his voice slicing through the silence. I checked my notebook. That's how long you've been with Vanguard. 15 years of wearing that uniform. 15 years representing my company. He took a step closer, and Beatrice instinctively took a step back, nearly tripping over her own feet. and in the span of 4 hours, Arthur continued, "I have watched you racially profile a passenger, deny her basic sustenance, emotionally abuse her," and then his voice dropped a dangerous octave. "Then I watched you deliberately assault a pregnant woman with near-boiling liquid, refuse her medical attention, lie to your captain, and attempt to frame her as a criminal to cover your own sadistic mistake." Beatrice opened her mouth, perhaps to offer a defense, a lie anything. "Mr. Pendleton." She was the turbulence. "Be silent," Arthur said. It wasn't a shout, it was a fiat. He turned away from her as if she were no longer relevant. He looked toward the cockpit door. "Sarah," Arthur called out to the junior attendant in the galley. Sarah jumped, terrified. "Yes, sir." "Mr. Pendleton, sir, get the captain on the phone now. Tell him Arthur Pendleton is securing the cabin and needs to speak to him immediately." Sarah scrambled for the interphone, like her life depended on it. Arthur then turned to the cabin at large. He raised his voice so everyone from row 1 to the back of economy could hear him. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Arthur Pendleton, CEO of Vanguard. I want to personally apologize for the appalling scene you have just witnessed. The earlier announcement from the flight deck was based on false information provided by the purser." He walked over to Maya's seat. She was still crying silently, overwhelmed by pain and shock, looking up at him in disbelief. Arthur knelt in the aisle beside her, regardless of the expensive suit he wore. His demeanor softened instantly into genuine concern. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said gently. "Maya, I am so incredibly sorry. You are safe now. Nobody is going to arrest you. Nobody is going to hurt you or your baby." "Do you understand me?" Maya nodded jerkily, unable to speak. "Is there a doctor on board?" Arthur shouted to the cabin, his voice booming. "I don't care what section they are in. If there is a medical professional on this plane, identify yourself now." A hand shot up in row 5A of first class. A man who had been asleep with headphones on during the entire ordeal. "I'm a dermatologist, Dr. Albright. Get over here," Dr. Arthur commanded. Now, as Dr. Albright rushed forward with his medical kit, the cockpit door burst open. Captain Davies emerged, looking flustered and angry at being summoned from the flight deck during an approach. "What is going on out here?" the captain demanded, glaring at Arthur. "Who do you think you are countermanding, my—" His eyes fell on Arthur. He stopped mid-sentence. He recognized the face from company newsletters from the annual reports from the framed portrait hung in the lobby of the flight training center. The captain's face turned a shade of pale that rivaled Beatrix. "Mr. Pendleton," the captain gasped. "Sir, I didn't know you were aboard. The manifest just said Arthur." "An oversight my secretary will be correcting," Arthur said coldly. He stood up to face the pilot. "Captain Davies, your purser, informed you that Mrs. Reynolds here assaulted her and was a security threat. Is that correct?" The captain looked nervously at Beatrice, who was shrinking against the galley wall. "Yes, sir. That is what Perseverane reported. A level 2 threat." Perseverane lied. Arthur stated, "I witnessed the entire event from seat 2A. Miss Vane deliberately poured hot coffee on this passenger and then fabricated a story to have her arrested." The captain looked horrified. He looked at Beatrice's betrayal, wearing with disbelief on his face. "Beatrice, is this true?" Beatrice stared at the floor, unable to speak. Her silence was a screaming confession. "Captain," Arthur said, taking charge of his airline, "you have a medical emergency on board that your crew ignored. You need to arrange for paramedics to meet the plane at the gate immediately upon landing, not police." "Paramedics. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "Right away, sir." Furthermore, Arthur continued, pointing a rigid finger at Beatrice. "This woman is relieved of duty effective immediately. She is not to touch any equipment. She is not to speak to any passengers, and she is not to enter the cockpit. She is to sit in the rear jump seat and remain there until authorities arrive to take her statement. Sarah is now acting purser for the remainder of this flight. "Understood, sir," the captain said, turning sharply back toward the cockpit to make the calls. Arthur turned back to Beatrice, who looked like a deflated balloon, all her venom replaced by pathetic fear. "You wanted police on the ground, Miss Vane," Arthur said, his voice like granite. "You'll get them, but they won't be there for Maya. They'll be there for the flight attendant who assaulted a passenger on my watch. Now get out of my sight to the back." Beatrix Vane, stripped of her power, her dignity, and her future, began the long, humiliating walk down the aisle to the rear of the plane, under the glare of the CEO and the hateful stares of every passenger she passed. The karma had only just begun to hit. The descent into Charles de Gaulle Airport was the longest 40 minutes of Beatrix Vane's life. She sat in the rear jump seat, strapped in like the prisoner she was about to become. The other flight attendants, even the ones she had bullied for years, refused to look at her. They busied themselves with landing preparations, stepping around her as if she were a piece of contaminated cargo. Up in first class, the atmosphere had transformed. Dr. Albright had stabilized Mir, applying high-grade burn dressings from the emergency kit and administering a safe, mild pain reliever. Arthur Pendleton remained by her side the entire time, speaking softly to her about his grandchildren, about architecture, about anything to keep her mind off the pain and the fear. When the wheels touched the tarmac, there was no applause, only a tense, heavy silence. As the plane taxied to the gate, Captain Davies came over the intercom. His voice was shaken. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We will be met by medical personnel and local authorities. No one is to stand until the first arse cabin has been cleared." The jet bridge connected. The door opened, but it wasn't the usual ground crew. 2 French paramedics in high-visibility jackets rushed on board carrying a stretcher. Behind them walked 3 officers of the Police National, their expressions grim, and a man in a sharp suit, the Vanguard station manager for Paris, who had evidently been called by Arthur from the air. "Here," Arthur signaled, standing up. "She needs immediate transport to the American Hospital of Paris. I will cover all costs personally." As the paramedics carefully lifted Moore onto the stretcher, she grabbed Arthur's hand. "My husband David, he's waiting for me in arrivals." "I know," Arthur said, squeezing her hand gently. "My security team has already found him. He is being escorted to the ambulance right now. You won't be alone, Maya." Maya was wheeled out, tears of relief finally falling as she saw the concern on the faces of the paramedics. Then Arthur turned to the police officers. He pointed to the back of the plane. "The woman in the rear jump seat," Arthur said, his voice carrying the weight of a judge passing sentence. "Beatrix Vane, I am pressing charges for aggravated assault endangerment of a minor and falsifying federal flight records. I have video evidence, and I have 5 witness statements." The officers nodded and marched down the aisle. Beatrice stood up as they approached her face, a mask of crumbling denial. "This is a misunderstanding. I am the purser. You can't touch me. That man is crazy." "Mademoiselle Vane?" the lead officer asked. "Yes, and I want to file a complaint against." "You are under arrest," the officer said, snapping handcuffs onto her wrists before she could finish. The click of the metal echoed through the quiet cabin. Beatrice shrieked as they hauled her forward. It was a sound of pure, entitled desperation. As she was dragged past first class, she looked at the passengers, begging for support. "Mr. Henderson," she cried out to the businessmen in 1A, "tell them she attacked me." Mr. Henderson looked at her, then deliberately picked up his magazine and turned the page. "I saw nothing of the sort. Officer, take her away." Beatrice was hauled off the plane, kicking and screaming, paraded past the hundreds of passengers she had looked down on for decades. Someone in economy, realizing what was happening, started a slow clap. It grew. Soon the entire plane was applauding as the tyrant of Flight 1882 was removed from her throne. The fallout was nuclear. Arthur Pendleton didn't just fire Beatrice, he obliterated her professional existence. Within 24 hours, the video Arthur had filmed went viral. It didn't just show the argument, it showed the aftermath, the burns, and Beatrice's cruel refusal to help. It showed her lying to the captain. The internet, usually a divided place, united in absolute fury against Beatrix Vane. By the time Beatrice was released on bail in Paris, pending her trial, her face was on every news channel in the world. The hashtag #YachaFireBatrick had trended #1 globally for 12 hours straight. But the real karma hit when she returned to her apartment in New York 3 weeks later, awaiting her extradition hearing. She opened her mail. The first letter was from Vanguard Global HR. Not only was she terminated for gross misconduct and endangerment, but because her actions were deemed criminal and intentional, a clause in her contract was triggered. She had forfeited her severance. She had forfeited her flight benefits. And most devastatingly, she had forfeited her company-matched pension. 15 years of savings gone. The second letter was from her landlord. He had seen the news. He didn't want a violent criminal in his building. Her lease was being terminated. Beatrice sat on her floor and wept. But she didn't weep for Maya. She didn't weep for the baby. She wept for herself. She still believed she was the victim. And that lack of remorse was exactly why the universe wasn't done with her yet. She tried to get a job. Any job. She applied to other airlines, rejected instantly. She applied to train lines, blacklisted. She applied to a high-end hotel as a concierge. The interview went well until the manager looked at her ID. Vane, the manager asked, pausing. Beatrice Vane, the coffee woman. That was a misunderstanding, Beatrice pleaded. I was framed by the CEO. The manager stood up. Get out before I call the police. We don't hire monsters here. Beatrix Vane, who once held the power to make passengers beg for water, was now unemployable in the service industry. She ended up taking a night shift job stocking shelves at a discount warehouse in New Jersey, wearing a name tag that she deliberately scratched the name off of, terrified someone would recognize her. 6 months later, the sanctuary. The late autumn sun filtered through the sheer curtains of the nursery in Maya Reynolds's Brooklyn brownstone, casting long golden shadows across the floor. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind of silence that Maya had learned to cherish after the cacophony of the last half-year. She sat in a plush oatmeal-colored rocking chair, the rhythmic creak-creak the only sound in the room. In her arms lay Leo, now 3 months old. He was a heavy, warm weight against her chest, smelling of milk and baby powder. He was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and a tuft of curly hair that matched her own. Maya looked down at her chest. The neckline of her sweater was low enough to reveal the faint, pinkish discoloration of the skin where the coffee had seared her. The physical wounds had healed thanks to the world-class dermatologists and laser treatments Arthur Pendleton had insisted on paying for, but the internal scars were slower to fade. For months, she had nightmares of being trapped in a metal tube, screaming for help, while a woman in a blue uniform laughed. She had flinched at the sound of boiling kettles. She had avoided travel entirely. But today felt different. Today the air felt lighter. The chime of the front doorbell broke the silence. A moment later, she heard the heavy footsteps of her husband, David, coming up the stairs. He appeared in the doorway, a look of bemused curiosity on his face, holding an enormous rectangular box wrapped in matte black paper and tied with a thick gold silk ribbon. "It's from the Vanguard corporate office," David whispered, careful not to wake the baby. Again, Maya offered a small, weary smile. "Arthur doesn't know the meaning of enough, does he? I think he's trying to balance the scales of the universe, honey." "Open it." David set the box down on the ottoman. With one hand supporting Leo, Maya pulled the ribbon. The paper fell away to reveal a hand-crafted mahogany case. Inside, nestled in velvet, wasn't just a gift. It was a statement. There was a letter handwritten on heavy cream stationery, with the embossed Vanguard letterhead. Maya picked it up. "Dearest Maya and Leo, I hope this note finds you in peace. I know that no amount of apologies can undo the pain of that day, but I promised you justice, and I write this to deliver it. This morning, the Tribunal des Grandes Instances in Paris finalized the verdict. Beatrix Vane has been sentenced to 2 years in a French correctional facility for aggravated assault and reckless endangerment. Due to the severity of her actions and the undeniable video evidence, the judge denied her request for a suspended sentence. She will serve her time. Furthermore, upon her release, she has been permanently placed on the international no-fly list. She will never step foot on an aircraft again. But punishment is not enough. We need prevention. Today, the board of directors unanimously voted to ratify the Reynolds Protocol. Effective immediately, this is a mandatory zero-tolerance training program for all 45,000 Vanguard employees worldwide. It focuses on unconscious bias, medical emergency prioritization, and the absolute duty of care. We have also installed audio-enabled CCTV in all galleys to ensure that no passenger is ever voiceless again. Enclosed is something for Leo. He won't need it for a while, but I wanted him to know that he will always be treated with the dignity his mother fought for. With deepest respect, Arthur Pendleton, CEO. Maya let out a breath she felt she had been holding for 6 months. Beatrice was gone. The monster who had terrorized her was locked away, stripped of her wings and her freedom. The karma wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was a total eraser of the life Beatrice had abused. She looked back at the box. Beside the letter sat a small black velvet jewelry case. Maya flipped it open. Inside gleamed a solid gold lapel pin in the shape of a Vanguard jet, encrusted with a single tiny diamond on the nose. Underneath the pin was a heavy card made of black titanium, Vanguard Global Status Chairman, Circle Lifetime Legacy Member, Leo Reynolds. Valid Infinity Lifetime Status. David chuckled, reading the card over her shoulder. The kid can't even walk, and he has more airline miles than I do. Maya traced the gold lettering. It wasn't about the perks. It wasn't about the free champagne or the leg room. It was an acknowledgement. Arthur had ensured that her son would walk into spaces that had tried to reject his mother, and he would be welcomed like royalty. 1 year later, the return. The automatic doors of JFK Terminal 4 slid open with a whoosh of air-conditioned air. Maya froze. The sounds of the airport hit her instantly. The rolling wheels of suitcases, the indistinct chatter of thousands of people, the periodic ding of the announcement chimes. Her heart began to hammer against her ribs. This was the first time she had stepped into an airport since Flight 882. She was headed to Tokyo for the International Design Expo. It was the biggest opportunity of her career, and she refused to let Beatrice Vane take it from her. But standing there clutching her passport, the panic rose in her throat like bile. "You got this?" David said, squeezing her shoulder. He had driven her to the curb, but he couldn't come through security. "You are Maya Reynolds. You own this place." Maya took a deep breath, smoothing the lapels of her emerald green blazer. "I own this place," she repeated. She walked toward the Vanguard first-class check-in area. It was busy, a line of wealthy travelers looking impatient. Maya prepared herself to wait, to be ignored, to fight for space. But as she approached the counter, the screens above the desk seemed to flicker. She scanned her boarding pass at the kiosk. A distinct melodic chime, different from the others, rang out. The light on the kiosk turned a brilliant gold. A gate agent, a woman named Sarah, not the Sarah from the flight, but a new, eager supervisor, looked up sharply. Her eyes widened as she saw the name on her screen. She didn't just smile. She came out from behind the desk immediately. "Mrs. Reynolds." The agent asked, her voice filled with a reverence usually reserved for heads of state. "Yes," Maya said, her grip on her bag tightening. "Welcome back, Mum. Mr. Pendleton's office alerted us to your arrival this morning. Please don't worry about the line." Sarah gestured to a velvet rope that was being unhooked by a security guard. "We have a private escort ready to take you through the diplomatic security lane. We want to get you to the lounge as smoothly as possible." Maya blinked. The people in line were staring, but this time it wasn't with disdain. It was with curiosity and envy. She wasn't the nuisance in 3A anymore. She was the VIP. "Thank you," Maya said, her voice steadying. The walk through the terminal was a blur of efficiency. She didn't have to take off her shoes. She didn't have to wait. When she arrived at the gate for the flight to Tokyo, the gate agent picked up the phone immediately. "She's here," the agent whispered. Maya walked down the jet bridge. Her pulse quickened as she saw the open door of the aircraft. This was the threshold. This was where the nightmare had begun. She stepped onto the plane. The atmosphere was unrecognizable. The galley smelled of fresh orchids, not stale coffee. The crew was standing at attention, their uniforms crisp, their smiles genuine. A tall man with kind eyes and a pin on his lapel that read Purser. James stepped forward. "Mrs. Reynolds," James said, bowing his head slightly. "It is a profound privilege to have you with us. I want you to know that this crew has been hand-picked. We are all certified level 4 under the Reynolds Protocol." He gestured to seat 1A. It wasn't just a seat, it was a sanctuary. A plush duvet, 2 pillows, and a handwritten note from the captain were waiting on the tray table. Maya sat down. The leather was soft. The space was hers. Before the door closed, the captain emerged from the cockpit, a different man than Captain Davis. He walked straight to row 1, removed his hat, and extended a hand. "Mrs. Reynolds," the captain said, "I'm Captain Miller. I just wanted to personally assure you that we're going to have a smooth ride to Tokyo. If you need anything at all, you tell James and he will tell me. You are the most important person on this manifest." "Thank you, Captain," Maya said. She felt the tears prick her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. The ghost of Beatrix Vane had been exorcised from the cabin. As the plane taxied to the runway, Maya looked out the window at the sprawling tarmac. She thought of the woman she was a year ago, scared, burning, and powerless. And she thought of the woman she was now. "Mrs. Reynolds," James appeared softly at her elbow. "We are about to take off." "Can I get you a beverage to start?" Maya looked at him. She looked at the galley where the boiling water was kept. The fear tried to spike, but she crushed it. She wouldn't live in fear. She smiled a dazzling, victorious smile. "I'd love a coffee, James," she said clearly. "Decaf with cream and sugar." "Coming right up," he replied warmly. As the engines roared and the plane lifted into the sky, Maya Reynolds took a sip of the warm, sweet coffee. It tasted like victory. She leaned back, closed her eyes, and finally, after a year of fighting, she enjoyed the flight. The story of Maya Reynolds is a powerful reminder that true character is revealed not when things are going well, but when power is challenged. Beatrix Vane thought her uniform gave her the right to look down on others. But she forgot that dignity is not a rank, it's a human right. Arthur Pendleton showed us that leadership isn't about sitting in an ivory tower. It's about standing up for what's right, even if it means tearing down your own employees to do it. Mere's bravery and Arthur's justice changed an entire industry, proving that while arrogance might win, a moment, truth wins the war. If this story moved, you please hit that like button. It really helps get these stories out to more people. Don't forget to share this with someone who needs to see karma in action, and subscribe for more incredible stories of justice and redemption. See you in the next